Hi, this is Aaron Eisberg, Nog from Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you're listening to Beyond Trek. You can follow them on Twitter at Beyond Trek Pod and on Facebook at Beyond Trek Productions.
This is Beyond Trek Podcast, your source for Star Trek on social media and around the web. I'm BigJ.
I'm Murray.
And I'm Dag, the Trivia Master. You can find us on Facebook at Beyond Trek Podcast and on Twitter at Beyond Trek Pod.
Red alert.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this next episode of Beyond Trek Podcast. Today, we're in the booth with BigJ. Say hi, BigJ.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for another podcast.
And Lauré. Say hi, Lauré.
Hello, all.
And today, we are going to be talking about the DS9 doc that was kickstarted and just released to the public last week. And BigJ and Lauré and I have had the opportunity to watch the documentary and most of the special features by now. And at the beginning, Max Grodenchik just being like, here is our jazz dedication to Deep Space Nine. I thought that was beautiful. It made me cry a little bit.
That was a great way to open. Hearing him sing and just the way it started was very nice. Like, I was not expecting this documentary to start with basically a song with the music, and it was really pretty captivating to start out that way.
And just the way that he was like, I miss Quarks and I miss Cisco and his home sweet home, and I thought that was just beautiful.
And being someone who just watched the entirety of DS9 in the last year. To come to see this documentary and see this presented. First off, I didn't even know that they did that, which was a fantastic surprise. That they do that at their panels at cons and whatnot. And I thought it was just there really isn't anything else like that for a fan base of a particular show that I've yet to see.
Right? Yeah, they've got an actual band. So you've got Max Grodenchik. Armin
Shimmerman.
Armin Shimmerman, Jeffrey Combs, and Casey Biggs. They do a song thing. So,
and for those of you listening who don't know the actors from the characters, that's Rom, Quark, Wei-Yun / like half a dozen other characters, and Damar, who, in my opinion, probably had with Nog one of the greatest arcs of the entire series of all of those characters.
Brunt, FCA.
You have a little bit too little lisp there. Brunt, FCA.
Oh, that was perfect.
But we can't do it. Can't do it any better than the marvelous Jeffrey Combs.
You can't. And so, Lauré, I really envy you having just watched it, and you got to see it. You got to see Deep Space Nine in the way that it was. I think truly the pioneering and how it was intended to be was something that you can binge watch. This was back in the day when there was really no such thing as binge watching. You had to wait every week for the next episode. And that was one of the things that was talked about a few times in this documentary, was just the overwhelming risk that they took in doing serialized television. And Rick Berman, during the interview in the documentary, talked about how the studio was just not a fan of serialized storytelling. They wanted their syndication opportunity. They wanted these self-contained episodes, to where you could just kind of jump in whenever you wanted. Alexander Siddig in the documentary said that it was kind of like a Big Mac. You've got this hamburger that it's the same way, no matter when or how you do it. And they took a lot of risks with this. And I think the reason that Deep Space Nine has become even more popular is because of the streaming services like Netflix, where you can just churn out this whole thing and really enjoy it. If you're really dedicated, maybe you can be able to get it done in a week, couple weeks. I mean, how long did it take you to get through it?
I believe we started about this time last year. Now, given that wasn't a consistent watching schedule, because I like being able to watch it with Dag here who knows Star Trek the way I know Lord of the Rings. But I think, and this is a weird experience because listening to them talk about how the studio fought them on this, on not wanting to serialize this and keep it into neat little episodes, and that you can have a little bite-sized part and not feel like you're totally left out. And
right,
yes,
it was like a fight. The whole, it sounded like from the documentary, is pretty much a constant 7-year battle.
It was. And unless you were the person who would meticulously set up your VCR and have a stack of empty tapes ready to go to record this, like some of us,
Yeah.
I had to do a few shows myself that weren't serialized. Then, right, the masses that they were trying to pull in for this, what they were attempting to sort of make a mainstream show,
really wouldn't have been that dedicated. So I can understand why they would have thought that.
But it almost seemed like the story took over everyone in the crew and the cast, in the writers. It sort of became a mind of its own and said, no, we need to do this, and this is how this is going to work. And it became what it is. And look, it's now making them still quite a bit more money because it's resurged with the ability to binge watch things.
Well, and they were right. They were absolutely right in regards to the difficulty of the serialized storytelling, because when Deep Space Nine aired, I want to say it was 92. It was 92 if I recall correctly. No, I'm sorry. Probably closer to 90, 93, 94. I'd have to look it up.
January of 93.
Yeah, there we go. January 93.
Trivia master.
You're all going to hate me. The show aired before I was born. Sorry.
Oh, this hurts.
DS9 was in the middle of its first season summer break when Lauré was born.
I'm grabbing my chest here. I'm just like, I was about to.
Let's not give one of the co-hosts a coronary today. We don't have 24th century tech.
You're fine.
I was going into my sophomore year of high school. Oh, man.
Oh, no. What have I done?
Yeah, I'm checking my pulse right now. Jesus
Christ. From the perspective of watching TNG and then going into DS9, and I grew up watching reruns of TNG because my dad liked it. I didn't watch them in any particular order. And I think that proved a point, hearing it from the writers and then watching DS9 after watching TNG in order, that there is a distinct difference between TNG's neat bite-sized episodes and fewer, extended storylines that might span 2 or 3 episodes, and Deep Space Nine's serialized plot line that really develops over all the seasons.
Right. And see, so the problem was, the problem that I encountered, which really agrees with what they were saying, when I was in high school, I was able to see every episode every week, was able to keep caught up. But when I was going into college, I remember this was the fall of '96 was my first year in college. And so Deep Space Nine was going into the 5th season. And it started to get really hard to follow because at the time, at least in my area where I'm at, it was on Fox 19. So it was on the Fox affiliate out here. And it seemed like they kept changing the dates, kept changing the day, kept changing the time. And on top of just college, playing sports, school, just the socializing, everything else, I lost that thread of being able to. There were a lot of factors that went into not being able to keep up with it. So most of the 5th and 6th season was kind of blotchy in regards to how much I was able to catch. And I knew I missed so much because there was that sense of what is going on? Oh my God, what have I missed? Et cetera, et cetera. But it was nice when I finally did get to doing a rewatch of it, which I did about a year or so ago. I did a rewatch of DS9. That was kind of a treat, was that I was able to then see all these episodes that I missed. And what got me really excited in the beginning of the documentary was how they went through and they started this, and it was kind of a thread that went through the whole documentary as to when the writer sat down and they broke the script on what would be their vision of an 8th season, which was pretty exciting. Like I like the idea of Nog being a captain on the Defiant. I think that the way they were writing it, and this was what I really liked about seeing, there's a lot of consistency in the writing staff, production staff, showrunner, which I think is a shame. I miss that because now with Discovery, it's like you've got a different showrunner every couple of weeks, and it just feels like there's not that cohesive bond that DS9 had, and it was so character driven, and so these writers had a passion for it, and you could see it when they're talking about and breaking into what their eighth season would be.
That was an absolute treat to watch them become a little think tank and brainstorm the eighth season together. That's the kind of camaraderie that we all wish we had when we went to work, right? Because that's
oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it was beautiful, and you can see how that comes out in the final product.
It was really also nice that they accompanied their writer's room conversation with illustration and animation.
Oh,
that was great.
Yes. That rendering was gorgeous.
Vedek Kira, who is I guess, still the administrator of Deep Space Nine, but Deep Space Nine is a shrine. There are emissary statues lining the promenade, each one holding
museum,
an orb of the prophets. And I'm thinking in my head, like, the orbs of the prophets, almost like Infinity Stones. Whoever wields them all has the power of the prophets or whatever.
Oh, wow, that's great.
But I'm just going to jump to the end of that segment. We can still talk about it, but I'm just going to jump to the very end where my mind is focusing. When they're like, the Defiant explodes, and then they get into this brawl on the promenade where Kira has to choose sides, and she grabs a phaser and defends her friends. And then Cisco shows up, and that's like the to be continued of the first episode. I'm really hoping that Cisco shows up with the crew of the Defiant and Nog.
I was blown. Oh yeah, I mean, I was blown away. It's like
you can't just kill Nog.
Just flash them onto the promenade from that time.
It is that's classic Deep Space Nine right there. Just the character conflict, Kira being caught in the middle between what Bajor was doing and then her friends, and it's that kind of thing that I think really defined Deep Space Nine and why so many people like when you watch the documentary and they show everyone coming together again for the Vanity Fair shoot. It was just like one big happy family that they were all together again.
Yep.
Yeah, it was really cool. This was like a compiled effort over 4 years, and they've got several interviews with various aspects of the cast. One of them, they've got Ira and Aaron, and then all the actors who played the villains. And then they've got, the main cast is sort of split up. You've got Terry and Nana, who are hanging out with Ira and talking about how that time Ira pitched an affair between Kira and Dukat, and Nana loses it.
And everybody threw up a little.
And I love
she was not happy about that.
I love reading about that because on Memory Alpha, Nana Visitor's page talks about how she adamantly refused to have any kind of sympathy for Dukat. She knew exactly where Kira stood and was never going to compromise on that boundary. And I love, you can see that emphatically in her response.
She's as fiery as her character. And I was just sitting there, I'm like, I'm going to swoon.
When Ira is like denying, no, we never wrote that. And she's just like, and yes, for those of you watching, you know what we're talking about.
Do not tell me. I remember it like it was yesterday. Yeah, you're right. And that was the thing that was really amazing about it was they're talking about like these different stories and these different small nuances that they, after all these years, they still remember about and they still talk about. And that was, yes, you're right. That was, I was just rewatching that part before we started. And, I thought that the character of Gul Dukat and the way that he was played again was what I liked about his character was that he wasn't a classic mustache twirling villain. He was, I almost want to say more anti-hero than villain because he really believed in what he was doing. And he believed that what he did, not to say that what he did was right. I'm not talking about the occupation, but more so of Cardassia after that, and its entrance into aligning with the Dominion. It really felt like that he believed in what he was doing, almost like Thanos. I kind of, in a way, describe or compare Gold Dukat to Thanos, because Thanos in Infinity War, especially Infinity War, he really, for a moment, got you to think that, hey, maybe what he's doing makes sense, and it's the Avengers that are wrong. They're the ones that are
shaking our heads on our side.
I know. It's a
insert clip where Dukat says, "I should have killed all of them."
Okay. No, you have a point.
One of them.
You do have a point, and that was the angle that they really wanted you to see, and that's, I think, and maybe this is just me because I binge watched SVU as a kid, so way too much Law and Order on my part. Maybe that's just me.
Great show.
But the angle, the way that he's depicted, how much of him you see, how much exposition you get, and how much of his thoughts are splayed across the screen, and the villain monologue, if you will, that he gets to do. And yes, we want to set him up as he wanted to be set up as a sympathetic villain. The problem is that he at his core isn't, because there's a very fine line, I think, between sympathetic villain and outright psychopath. And after several seasons, I was like, okay, maybe he's a sympathetic villain. And then from the last half of 6 into 7, I'm like, no, this guy's an outright psychopath.
Absolutely. I agree.
He has no actual remorse for the people he's hurting. Yes, he fully believes in what he's doing, but he's extremely manipulative, and that is all that is happening. He is going to manipulate anyone and everyone around him to get what he wants and what he believes in, which includes Kira. And he doesn't care what cost, who has to pay for it, who has to die, how much grief and anxiety and outright stress and anger he causes to anyone, and particularly Kira, and he likes that because he's crazy.
Well, yes, I think that the death of his, and we have to say now, if you haven't seen this series before now,
spoiler
folks,
alert.
Yes, there's going to be spoilers. It's over 20 years old, and so, but yeah, when I think it was, well, seasons 3, 4, 5, and once we got into 6 is when that downward slide happened, when he lost Ziyal. I do think that for a few seasons there, you could kind of maybe sort of, I don't want to say sympathize, but like
it seemed like he was going to come around.
Yes, it seemed like he was going to come around, but you're right. He got broke by what happened. And when you're talking about huge character arcs, I really think that you're right, Dag, when you mentioned it earlier. Nog and Dukat, they had some serious, like, big character arcs. I'm sorry, Damar.
I just want to say that I meant Damar.
Right. Yeah, Nog and Damar. I mean, that's what I liked about Deep Space Nine. It was not just the captain, the first officer, and the doctor every episode show. It was a big ensemble cast, and that was one of the things that the documentary talked about, was just these arcs that these characters went through. And when you take Cisco or Dax, O'Brien, yes, everyone kind of had their arc, but none as impactful as Nog and Damar. It just really felt like it was a huge change. I mean, can you think of any character that had as big an arc or a change in that show?
Well, they even comment on that in the writer's room. They talk about how the character on DS9 who had the smallest arc still had more of an arc than any character on TNG.
Sure.
Absolutely.
And while I could argue that Wesley ascended to time-traveling God, he's up there with Cisco.
Right.
But
And was nice enough to show to
Don't tell him
Will and
that'll go with
Deanna's wedding.
right, but even then, Wesley's Ascent was a single episode of being upset with Starfleet and then deciding to go skip the universe with the Traveler. He didn't get that 7-season buildup of, okay, joining the Prophets actually makes sense for Sisko.
I was a little upset about the end, but
Well, and Avery Brooks said that he wanted to ensure that Sisko was not going to be gone forever. As a Black father, he wanted to represent someone who was present.
oh gosh, that's like having the best mug of hot chocolate you've ever had. Watching this beautiful storyline of and the bonding and the growth and all the things that we might fight about on this show or that show or some other show. And here you've got Avery throwing heart and soul into this storyline, and I was speechless for a lot of it, and I was thrilled for what it is, especially for the development of like his family and the relationship he has with his son, and then with Cassidy and with his father, and you see so much of into his personal life, and I'm like, this is why are other shows this wholesome? Gosh, Dark Star Trek, my foot. Mm-mm.
Right. Well, in Sirach Lofton was even quoted as saying in the documentary that off screen, Avery Brooks and himself would spend time together, basketball games, et cetera, and he said that Avery introduced him as his son, along with his actual son. Like these are my sons. So it was really the bond was there as actors and as people, because Avery really treated Sirach like his son, so that when playing these characters, it really came through as believable and genuine, because it was. And it's very interesting how you mentioned Sisko being a Black man and being a single father. So back when the show was airing, that was kind of a big thing that a lot of people were really wanting to die on that hill of, oh my God, there's going to be an African-American commander. He's going to be a single father. These were all things that before the show even aired had people ruffled up about. And it's just, you know how it is with Star Trek and Star Trek fans. It does not matter what show it is. There were naysayers for TNG, and it has become like the holy grail. There were naysayers about TNG, naysayers about DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery, Picard. Now, not as many naysayers with Picard, because I mean, you don't mess with Patrick Stewart. But basically, no one has liked any of these Star Trek shows when they're about to air. And I remembered how controversial that was. But I could really relate. Well, I can relate to it more now than I did when I was a teenager watching it. But because I'm a minority as well, and as African American, seeing Sisko and seeing that character on the screen, and then years later, there was some time that I spent as a single parent, and that really talked to me. I could really relate to that, because that was just so different then. And that's the thing that I really like about Deep Space Nine, is that throughout your entire life, I mean, this is, this show, it's still fine. You can still find things that you can relate to as you get older, going back and looking at it again. And it's been over 20 years since the show aired, and you can still relate to the characters.
I think it's extremely relatable still today, despite it having aired 20 some years ago, 20 plus years ago. I think it's still relatable because there are still single parents. There are still people trying to be successful in their careers and have a healthy family life at home. And if you're not a straight white male, somebody's going to have something to say about it. So I think it's it was beautiful. I was speechless for a lot of it, and I thought this was so important. This is so valuable, and I'm so happy that we have access to it the way we do. I mean, you can get the base level of Netflix. And
I
you can,
really agree. I think it was really cool that DS9 probably gave us our most diverse cast. From
Very diverse.
What I want to call the golden age of Trek, when in TNG, DS9, and Voyager were on. We had, an African American captain, single father with a son. You had 2 women who were aliens, one of which had lived 7 lifetimes as a male and female.
The other who was probably the archetype of female that most people would criticize because she's fiery and angry and assertive and, really into her job and not terribly feminine in a lot of ways that might be normally viewed as feminine.
And Nana even said that the reason she was attracted to the writing was because the dialogue she was written didn't seem like it was written just for a woman.
There we go.
She was allowed to be strong and rebellious and in your face. And I mean, I don't know if you remember Emissary, but when Kira comes on stage, we've been used to hanging out with Cisco this whole time, and she is just up in his face from the second you get go, and they're letting us know right away, this ain't your daddy Star Trek.
Right, it's not.
I have loved her from day one. Oh,
right.
Gosh.
I mean,
she's amazing.
The 90s shoulder pads are also front and center, but we don't have to worry about fashion right now.
My opinions on her costume changes are another subject for another day.
That Starfleet uniform in season 7.
Perfect. Oh. Yes. Well, and that ruffled some feathers also. It ruffled feathers having a strong female character on TV because, and I don't want to point the fingers at particular demographic or say Star Trek fans as a whole, but there is, and I'm going to tread very carefully on this statement, but when it comes to science fiction and it comes to franchises like this, I do believe that there is certainly a majority demographic of a fan base that was not happy with a strong female character.
I've spoken to a female fan of the show today who says she didn't like Kira. We didn't get too far into that, so I couldn't tell you why exactly. But if her initial opinion was of this person, and I don't know why, I'm sure she's got her reasons. But as someone who looked at Kira and went, "That's me," to some degree, and seeing this fiery, assertive female presence in the show, the representation was it. It'll change your life. Who says representation doesn't matter? Fight me.
Right, absolutely. And it's a great thing that you mentioned representation, because this was a part in the documentary that Ira Stephen Bear confirmed that I believe a lot of us probably thought was that he wanted to go ahead, and he and Andrew Robinson intended for Garak to be a gay Cardassian, to go ahead and just break that envelope, have Garak be gay. But Ira said, basically, I'm paraphrasing, that he backed down from that. Like, just kind of got cold feet, and he regretted it. He regretted not going ahead and doing that, and just how much they could explore with
indication. Okay, I'm done now.
I think the thing that Ira regretted the most, at least according to the documentary, was not that they didn't do it, but was that they didn't even try for Garak and Bashir.
You're right.
He's like, they have that little exchange there where it's like, well, could we have done it? He's like, that's not the point. We didn't even try. And they had that 4th season episode Rejoined, which made sense from a Trill point of view. And that might have been the only way they got it past, the higher ups at CBS.
And with that, I mean, do you think that the thought process was, if we're going to have gay characters, it would be easier for us to pull it off if it's 2 women than it would be if we try to pull it off with either party being a male or two males.
Because lesbians sell, apparently.
I guess.
I think you just summed that up.
Yep.
I was going to try to dance around that aspect, but no, I think it's true.
No, that's exactly why they got to pass.
The demographic that watched Deep Space Nine at the time was young guys, and that was more attractive than two men kissing.
And I'm sorry, but the very first introduction of Garrick and that interaction between Garrick and Bashir, I mean, who didn't see that?
I didn't.
Oh yeah,
because I was 11.
Well,
okay, that's a good excuse. That's a very good
excuse here. Right?
You're excused.
Go watch it now. Go watch it now. It hit you like a ton of
last year.
I watched it by myself. It was one of the few episodes I watched by myself, and I was immediately texting Dad because we weren't in the same vicinity at the time. And I'm texting him, going, "Are they serious? What?"
Right. Well, and exactly. Well, and there was a story that Terry Farrell had said about. Let's see. I think you just said I'm almost drawing a blank the episode name. It was rejoined when Curzon's ex-wife,
Lenara Khan.
Right. So now you've got her on the station, and Dax is now Jadzia, now a female host. And I remember the story that Terry said about that was, so the day that they were doing the scene of Jadzia and Lenara.
Lenara Khan was the name of the character.
Right. So that day that Terry Farrell and that actress were going to do that scene and do the kiss, she said that there were so many more people on set and around the stage, et cetera, than there ever had been. So Lauré, you're right. That's what sells. And that tells you right there is, word gets out that, they're filming the lesbian kissing scene. Let's go check it out.
That's exactly what happened.
Right. That is precisely what happened. That they had a whole lot of extra people hang around, and that just tells you right there that that's what sells. And yes, I'm sure that was a much easier sell to the studio than it would have been to have Garrick coming out of the closet.
Well, they would have gotten protesters for that one.
Oh yeah, not my Trek.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have a Not My Trek crew in every Trek. I mean, there's going to be the resistance and the purists in every fandom who want to see what they already loved continued. But I think time has shown, just as it has with the TNG people who didn't like it, the DS9 people who didn't like it, Voyager, Enterprise, we come around in the end. Those immediate reactions soften over time. People give things chances. They realize they were wrong, and the rest of the fandom, we grow together. And I think that above all should be the permeating message of Star Trek is, IDIC, and we're going to have Star Trek in infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And part of accepting that is accepting that everybody's take on Star Trek is going to be a little bit different. And that's the true challenge, is being able to see that and say, you know what, I think I can dig it.
And I think an untapped representation that they got into, especially with the character and the design of Jadzia, was anyone who, and this is coming from the younger generation watching this, anyone who felt non-binary or just sort of in between somewhere, not one and not the other, but both and neither at the same time. You've got this character that's been one and the other and one and the other and one and the other, and all these life experiences that they've accumulated over time. I think that was amazing to see as a non-binary person on screen and represented with experience and intelligence and wit and
strength and the ability to snark up the usual characters.
Well, right, but also being an extremely valuable person and have that. Yeah, it's emphasized, but it's not the biggest deal. And I thought, they may not even have known that they reached out to that, but they did.
Yeah, and you got to remember, this was in the 90s.
Right.
Yeah, this was in the 90s when there really was not that was still mostly unheard of. So it was very forward thinking, because if you see these things now, then it's almost like it's not a big deal. I mean, you see Jadzia and Lenara. You go to Battlestar Galactica. There was Admiral Kane, played by Michelle Forbes, who was Rolaren in TNG. Had this thing for one of the Cylons, one of the female Cylons, and I think another character. And it's the kind of things that you don't put a whole lot of thought into it. Back then, yeah, that ruffled a lot of feathers, but now you don't realize it. It just kind of it's more normal now, and that was one of the things that I there's a lot of things we can commend Deep Space Nine on in regards to how many things it did that was pretty revolutionary back then. One, the serialized storytelling, the inclusion of minorities, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, I can't think of any show since then that had done that in such a complete package like Deep Space Nine.
And it is so interesting even today, beyond the identity social issues, how well they still capture and resonate with other social issues, such as, Far Beyond the Stars is a strong episode about keeping Black men down and police abuse. And then you've got Past Tense Part 1 and 2 that talks about unemployment and the homeless and the mentally ill and sanctuary cities and governments turning their back on people. And
the scary thing is that stuff's happening. Like,
right, that is what's scary.
It's still happening. Everybody has cameras now, so maybe it feels like it's happening more. Like, we didn't have cameras in the 90s, and we didn't have the internet, so we couldn't just pop it up on Facebook and instantly reach out to hundreds of people about these injustices. They were happening then. They're happening now. And watching shows like DS9 makes you really question how much we have moved forward from those issues. If 6 guys in a writer's room could pop out these episodes 25 years ago, where are we now?
I mean, that's pretty scary, considering, like, if you look at how the Dominion turned on Cardassia, and you look at what happened like yesterday in Hong Kong, it's terrifying.
Yeah,
absolutely. Good example. You're absolutely right.
Let's turn a brighter corner.
A little bit.
I'm glad you mentioned a brighter corner, because what I thought was really bright and was really a lot of fun to look at. How about the CGI redo of the battle scene from Sacrifice of Angels, when Starfleet was making a run to get through the Dominion and retake Deep Space Nine?
It was
so pretty.
Oh, that was so nice to look at.
The detail, I love the detail of it. I love the fact that when those ships explode, they look like real explosions and not just superimposed fire effects.
Yes.
We just watched the first episode of Voyager Caretaker Part 1 and 2, and when the Kazon ships are crashing into the Caretaker's array, you can see the ships head towards the array, but then it's just a superimposed fire effect, and
that's some Power Rangers level explosions there.
It's super obvious.
You see them jump before
and
they get
in the
thrown,
DS9 space battle, it's the same thing, but with that HD re-render, with the original people who rendered that scene the first time, who got a hold of the original clips and rebuilt them frame by frame with new models. They look amazing. The colors are super vibrant.
It's crisper. The picture is definitely clearer. You put that on some VR and you just zone out.
And the range of the battle is much grander. Like, there are a lot of ships in there that I just didn't pay attention to when I watched it in the rewatch that we just did.
There's so much going on.
Yeah. You can watch that little clip, that little 20-second clip. You could watch that 7 or 8 times and focus on a different thing. First thing you see is the Defiant. Then you look in the background at all the Breen ships, and then you look. There's There's Galaxy class ships that are flying around in there, and Excelsior class ships, and these Vorcha class Klingon cruisers coming out of the sky with tremendously more detail than was originally rendered. It's mind blowing.
You're right. It's really rich. You can watch it 5 or 6 different times and have something new or something different to look at and to focus on, because there's so much going on. And that scene alone, I'm sitting here watching it right now. It's amazing. This right here is, I think, the big thing that we keep asking for. Please give us a high def redo of Deep Space Nine. Please take these battles and do the same thing. And I read, I can't remember where I read this. I know it was in conjunction with the documentary, was the fact, yes, it was from someone who actually worked on this re-render, was that it is affordable. It can be done. It's not as hard as everyone, well, it would be like impossible to us, but to them, it's one of those things. It's like, no, it's not as hard as what's being made out, and it's not as expensive as what's being led on. This can be done. It can happen. It's just a matter of what does CBS want to spend their money on? And apparently they, for whatever reason, just don't want to. I don't know. I don't know what, if the margins aren't right or price point or whatever, but basically this guy said, yes, this can be done. Absolutely can be done.
Yeah. And I hope that there are enough people who are interested in this documentary that gives CBS the green light to say, you know what, it's probably worth it. I'd buy it.
Well, whoever would have thought at any time that we would get Jean-Luc Picard back? And look at that. And that's happening. We've got pretty much, unofficially, I've seen a lot of folks refer to it as season 8 of TNG.
Yeah.
Which will be fine, except that, it's not on the Enterprise. It doesn't have the main crew.
Data.
Either Data or B4 or a hologram of one or the other. That's up in the air a little bit.
It's got to be B4.
We did just watch Nemesis recently too, so that arc has been revealed.
I've been filled in on this.
There's been so many shows making the comeback or returning. You've got to think that in our lifetime,
looking at you, Beverly Hills 90210.
I mean, I'm thrilled just for the thing. Just for the Picard thing, because the one thing I love about Star Trek for all the series is that there's always hope. Even if it looks really dire, there's hope. Something's going to make this right. And they don't leave you torn apart at the end of an episode without some semblance of someone's going to come through. This is going to be made right. We're going to be okay. For mostly, for maybe not blowing up Nog right away.
Right, exactly. Well, and I'm at the part in the documentary now. I'm kind of just jumping around a little bit here and there as we're talking, and they're getting to the part where the talk of bringing in a TNG character into Deep Space Nine, and talking to Michael Dorn about it being Worf. And the reception kind of at first was that they were a little slighted. Armin Shimmerman in this documentary said that they felt slighted about that they were bringing in a new character, and that he would be a threat to other characters. And I really think that the start of season 4 was just that big 1-2 punch of Sisko's got the goatee and the bald head. Now he had the goatee within, I want to say the last 2 episodes of season 3, but season 4, he comes in, he's got the goatee, he's got the shaved head. Then we have Worf coming onto the station. I mean, you want to talk about a show growing the beard. It grew the goatee, shaved the head, and brought on a badass Klingon. And I remembered seeing that when it aired, just Worf stepping onto the Deep Space Nine on the station, that was big. I think that was the big addition for the show.
I mean, if we bring somebody back from either TNG or Deep Space Nine, especially Deep Space Nine, sure, we'd love to have everybody, but Worf would certainly be like the oh yeah moment, because Worf's here, it's gonna go down.
Yeah, you're right. And my gut instinct is to say if there's anyone that I want to see come back again, it'd be Worf. But another part of me says we've gotten plenty of Worf. He was in 4 movies, 10 seasons. I'm sorry, 11 seasons of Trek and 4 movies. I think we've explored Worf inside and out. If he were to have a cameo or have an appearance on Picard, I would not be disappointed. I wouldn't. It's just, what else can we do with the character? I think him coming on to DS9 was great, and it seemed like eventually was pretty well received among the cast.
Klingons do not get explored in and out.
I guess they also don't get prostate cancer.
Are you going to check a Klingon? Are you going to check a Klingon for prostate cancer? Come on.
They've got all those.
They need a bot for
redundant organs. Who needs to worry about that when you're a Klingon?
No. Wouldn't it be really? Sorry, this just popped in my head. But wouldn't it be really cool to have a cameo from Quark?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
Just sure, he may not have come into direct contact with Picard personally, but he runs sort of the hub. He sees everybody because he's the place where everybody stops through on their way to this and their mission to that and their quest for that or whatever. And he's got such a massive network. Would it not be almost like, yeah, of course it's Quark, for him to show up when we need something that seems impossible, and poof, here's Quark, because he knew about that, because he's got a massive network.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. It seems like it would be a pretty logical choice. One of the parts I really liked about this, what we left behind, was the Ferengi episodes and the talk about that, because I think that on Deep Space Nine, some of the Ferengi episodes were some of my favorite ones. It was always fun to see the Ferengi. I might be alone in that. I'm not saying that the Ferengi episodes were my absolute favorites. It was just that it was a delight to see those. Like I never minded seeing a Ferengi episode.
Moogie is the grandma I wish I had.
Moogie.
Yeah, the Ferengi episodes were unexpectedly wholesome because, in the beginning, this is the first series to really go into Ferengi culture. You had some Ferengis on TNG, but they weren't the...
It was almost an insult to what we saw on DS9.
Well, and that's the thing, is for those of us who saw TNG first, we're going into DS9 going, oh no, it's these crazy womanizing savages.
They wouldn't even let them stand up straight in TNG.
Right. And what we got were really well-developed 3-dimensional society with, rules of acquisitions being quoted left and right, 178 words for rain, really thoughtful dynamics from a society that was very, to begin with, very male-dominated. Women were relegated to living in their homes, not wearing clothes, pre-chewing food for their mates. I mean, it was as bad a parody as you can get. And to have that end with, Ishka coaching the Negus into making Ferenginar more progressive, handing the staff over to Rom, who is just going to be, an amazing leader for that kind of Ferenginar.
And you gave the perfect word to describe the Ferengi episodes: wholesome. They were all wholesome episodes, which is not something that you expected in DS9 with the Ferengi episodes. They were just downright wholesome episodes.
And it certainly wasn't your cookie cutter wholesome. I think what I admired so much about the Ferengi episodes, despite them being kind of awkward and maybe cringy here or there, but it was the depiction of what you might call a dysfunctional family that functioned. They functioned. You could see it. Like, it's not perfect. They aren't always super kind and respectful to each other. They have some issues and they duke it out a little bit. And there's some manipulation here or there, but nobody's out to really. No one really means what they say when they get mean and vindictive about it. And I love that depiction in comparison to Cisco's family, which was very wholesome. And I thought that was kind of important to show, that there's another family and that it's not perfect either, but and they handle it very differently, but they handle it.
You're right. Absolutely. And for anyone listening who wants to see a very peak Ferengi episode, there's the Magnificent Ferengi, where Quark puts together a ragtag of other Ferengi cohorts of his to go rescue his mom.
Oh boy!
From Empok Nor, from another, basically arranging a prisoner exchange.
Because despite not liking Moogie for this reason or that reason or whatever it is, you can't lose her.
Oh yeah, you can't.
The whole planet will fall apart.
Right. Well, especially not when she's being held captive by Iggy Pop.
Well, there goes one of my trivia questions for this episode.
Sorry to take your fire away, but he was a great Vorta. He was a great Vorta. Now, if you want to see a Ferengi episode that was maybe kind of missed the mark, there is Prophet and Lace.
Yep, and there's a lot of controversy around that I don't think I'm qualified to get into.
It's all kinds of gray matter. I don't even think I'm qualified.
So I think we'll chalk that up as to none of us are qualified to really dive in.
Not my division.
Right, yeah.
No, I mean, Little Green Men, that was hilarious. Where Nog, Quark, and Rom and Odo get stuck on Area 51 during the Roswell incident.
Oh my gosh!
We made a great GIF out of that regarding all the Area 51 memes that are so popular right now.
I don't think I could breathe during that episode. I was laughing so hard.
But then you get a lot of, I go back to Nog, the way that Nog had some really defining moments when he approaches Cisco to say, I don't want to be like my dad. I don't want to live this legacy of horribleness. I want to be in Starfleet. And not only does he want to be in Starfleet, but he still approaches being in Starfleet like a Ferengi. Like, I'm going to bribe you to let me be in Starfleet. And when do I get my uniform? It's like, no, you have to go to school, my friend.
Absolutely. You can't lose your culture.
Right. No, and it was the perfect blend of writing for that character. He had that moment. He had a moment where he had that moment on Valiant where he gets to be with his heroes, Red Squad, who were dispatched on that mission during the events of Paradise Lost, by the way.
Correct.
Just wanted to point that out. And especially in I call it a two-part episode, but it's not really. There's an episode in between. But the Siege of AR-558 and It's Only a Paper Moon, where, Nog is lying on that bed, having lost his leg, and he seems to be taking it like a champ. But you really can tell that the writer's room was like, okay, how do we deal with this in a context that respects war? That
was such an important call out, and that meant a lot to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
And Nog went from being a mischievous little...
Kissa?
Delinquent?
Mm-hmm.
to a gaining respectable officer who was just trying to do his best on this and do everything. And then he went through true trauma. He gave it all.
Yeah.
And sure, we can grow you a new leg and all, but it's not the same because you still had to experience it. And he comes through and you see this massive arc, this massive change in him, and you cry because you're watching him go through this, and you see how ragged it leaves his mind
you're right. There's a lot of thankfulness in this documentary. They talked to some veterans who said that they really appreciated the depiction that they gave Nog for war and what he suffered, what he was going through. And you're right. It's the kind of thing that just you're watching this and your mouth is dropped open because you expect something like that to happen to probably one of the more
Cisco.
I guess, yes, Cisco.
I was thinking one of the more background of the characters.
Yeah, probably a little more background than him. Yeah,
it's not something anybody wants to talk about, but it's here. It's very real for the person who's going through it, and they can't just shove it off in a corner. And this, from growing up watching primetime TV with my parents and all of NCIS, they haven't nearly touched the depth of emotion that this kind of trauma causes someone as DS9 did, I promise you.
And they spent, there was an entire Nog episode, which was great for a character that was not, I don't want to say among the B group, that just does it injustice, but for a character that was not one of the primary 5 or 6 Starfleet officers and Kira, got a whole episode to himself to explore all of this and what happened. Now, if this had been Voyager, that whole issue would have been wrapped in an episode, would have been done. You would never have heard anything about it again. But Deep Space Nine spent a couple episodes solely on that topic, which was amazing.
And we were talking about, representation for underrepresented groups, Wounded Warrior representation straight up in that episode.
Oh, yes, they did.
DS9 might have been the Dark Trek, which it was a new concept to me watching them talk about how everybody was calling it the Dark Trek. And I'm like, I was for it. Sorry.
But I mean, it totally matches the tone of those serialized fictional dramas that are out there today.
DS9 was rough and tumble, and it was not polished like TNG and its Shakespearean presentation of conflict and dealing with that stuff. It's not as clear cut as so many other things. DS9 was real. And I think that's why it made such an impact, because it was real to so many people who had not much else to go on.
It was about 10 years ahead of its time. It really was.
Future Jay, when you're in the editing booth, please superimpose the Avery Brooks track from where he's screaming, "It's real," in that moment. Thanks, Future Jay.
Yes.
That particular episode, it took me a few days to get over, because the sheer exhibition of emotion, the sheer investment, the raw energy in that,
and Nana captures that.
Haha, funny.
Nana captures that.
God, Jesus.
Nana captures that in the documentary as well, when she's talking about how he gave that speech around that table and then he just collapses. And she's like, being an actor, you talk about letting God in, meaning letting the role take you where the role goes. And when he collapsed and I just saw him fall into it and he was gone. And it took him a bit to come back.
She was the one holding him, so she saw that.
And the assistant director was there saying, I bet I could have just recorded for half an hour and Avery would have been doing that for half an hour.
Right. Yeah, he said he was the one who was in charge of saying cut, but he just did not know what to do.
Yeah,
should I keep this going?
That was just the assistant director, because Avery Brooks was the director of that episode.
Right, absolutely.
Which I also think is extremely important that he got to direct a handful of those.
Jazz singer.
Yes. Like Talk No Jazz Singer. That was talking to Avery Brooks, what they were saying in the documentary, and they're absolutely right.
Too much good stuff. So I only have 2 trivia questions.
Trivia alert.
Oh no.
Trivia
Is that the alert?
alert.
Is that the trivia alert? Dun, dun, dun. All right, let me get my trivia hat on.
While we've been sitting here talking, I have been just writing down little notes about the things we've been talking about. You got the first one right already. In the Magnificent Ferengi, when they exchanged Iska for Kivon, who played the other Vorta, Iggy Pop.
Iggy Pop.
Right, yeah, Iggy Pop.
Iggy Pop. In the Pale Moonlight was originally written as a conflict between Captain Sisko and who?
It wasn't between Captain Sisko and Garrick?
No.
So,
originally it was between Captain Sisko and Jake.
Wow.
When they originally pitched that episode, Jake, being the ever vigilant news reporter, stumbles upon something interesting, goes to investigate it, gets a clue from Garrick, who lets him know that, he follows the trail back to his dad, where he realizes his dad did what he did in that episode and it caused a rift between Jake and Sisko.
Oh, I like that.
And they took that draft and they read it and they're like, Avery's never going to go for this. The bond between Jake and Ben is way too strong. It's never going to happen. So they changed it to be a much more internal struggle for Sisko and Garrick.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but that would have been a very fitting DS9 episode. Like,
right, it would have been very DS9.
Yes, that would not have been abnormal. That would have been perfect DS9. Wow, yeah, I didn't know that one.
I'm very bad. I don't remember the names of the specific episodes. I just remember what happened.
Well, this next trivia question is going to be a little bit more difficult.
Fun.
If you didn't like it before, you're not going to like it now.
Great.
What was the name of the episode that the Kira Ducat affair became?
Oh, no. I know the episode. I forgot the name.
Mariska Hargitay bursting through the wall like the Kool-Aid Man.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, so a hint. This is the episode that inspired Fragged. Haven't actually recorded on it yet because we chose to do
There's a name
the more
for
classic
this, and I remember
episodes
the name,
of Star Trek for Frag.
but I can't do words right now.
The name of this episode is Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night.
That's right.
Oh, man, I know. That's right.
So, those are the 3 trivia questions that I had for the documentary. Gosh, were there any other burning things? We didn't get through all the special features. Oh, did you watch the credits?
Yes, I did. Yes, the credits.
When Ira and Nana are talking about the best moment of Deep Space Nine, and they cut to Ala Moraine.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my goodness gracious.
Oh dear.
Very much a classic.
We actually got a hit from Nana on Twitter when I posted that, so it's cool.
I like it. I love it. Well, there's so much, and we could be sitting here for another hour talking about the documentary. It's great. I would highly encourage our listeners to check out What We Left Behind. It was a very good, very well thought out documentary, and it's not your typical talking head on screen documentary. It was very well produced, put together. I'm not huge on documentaries, but this one was really top notch. So really, please, if you have means to get it, it is out on Blu-ray. I would highly recommend it. I give it a 10 out of 10, easy.
And don't forget to document your reviews on Amazon so that the producers of that documentary can feed that information back to the people who might be able to make an HD DS9 re-release a thing.
Yes.
Yes, we need that. We need the HD DS9 re-release. We need season 8. We need some more Deep Space Nine.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond Trek Podcast. I'm Dag.
I'm BigJ.
I just came for the food.
And that's the show.
No, that's perfect. That is hilarious. That's hilarious. I like that. That is in it. That's definitely going to be in it. I'm here for the food.
We are Beyond Trek Podcast. Lower your inhibitions and surrender your years. We will add inspirational and hilarious Trek content to your day. Your attention will adapt to subscribe to us. Resistance is futile.